record to on this computer. There we go. All right. So, where did I? Oh, there. Right. So this is how, according to me and my comrade in arms, Brynjolfur, think you should get started with a fencing practice. Obviously, the first step is always to watch The Princess Bride, get some swords, and then you just start fencing. It's really, really a three-step plan. Now, any questions? Jokes aside.
Is the Three Musketeers an acceptable substitute?
Oh, you're on the fence there. You might. No, obviously, there's more to it than just picking up a sword and poking each other. We need to establish some sort of formalia. So the first thing you should do, or among the first things you should do, is contact a fencing marshal from another group, or at the principality level, on the kingdom level, whatever you may have. And they may point you in the right directions, such as reading the Marshal's Handbook and the fencing rules. These will give you a good picture of how you could get a good practice going, and especially get to know the rules that we will follow. You should find a suitable location. This could be a field nearby where you live. It could be your own backyard. You could rent a space from an indoor sports hall, wherever you may fancy. If you are going to fight outdoors in public, it may be a very good idea to notify the landlord or whoever may own the place, and also the police, because we are handling weapons after all. Even if they aren't sharp and we most likely won't hurt ourselves, they will be seen as weapons, and they should be treated as such. You wouldn't walk around with an airsoft rifle or anything like that in willy-nilly in public. You should, in the same way, you should not do that with a longsword or a rapier or anything like that. Now, you have made the necessary steps to contact the people that may need to know that you are doing a very fun thing, which is fencing. Now, how do you get started with the fun bit? Now, you may already have started doing this. You've gotten a fencing mask and a sword and something, and you've started playing in your backyard with your friends. You might even have played LARPs or something else that might inspire you to try historical fencing. One good thing that you could do is invite another experienced fencer or a fencing marshal from a nearby parish, and they can hold a class for you, and they can help you establish routines and how do you hold a practice, how do you get to conduct yourself on the field. They can show you how to warm up. They can show you how to cool down. And they can help you with both things regarding the fencing, regarding the practice, and how to basically do what I'm trying to do right now. So when you got that down, you should establish a routine, and you should try to stick to it. You should probably get a day in the week that suits you and at least most other people that you want to play with. If you find that, Saturday afternoon, that's a great time, we can get a lot of people going, then that's exactly what it should be. And you should try not to change this unless something really major happens that makes it so that none of you can show up to the practice. And of course, if you are going to hold practice, you should show up. Everybody should show up. But even if it's just yourself showing up, if you're going to have a practice and you're going to start a routine, then at least one of you need to be there. It can be just reading a fencing manual, it can be trying out some blows, whatever it may be, but you need to establish that this is the time where we're fencing and this is when we should be doing this. And you should also establish some sort of communication array. If you have a group chat on your text messages, if you get a Discord, if you have a Facebook group, whatever suits your needs and what most people use, an email list. That way you can decide when, oh, well, nobody could show up this time, literally no one, I'm sick, whatever it may be. People can notify you when things go awry, when they can and cannot show up. And you let each other know that we're practicing right now, you're missing out. Please come and not miss out. I'm racing through this. If you have any questions, you should just throw them out there. Now, we all like having things. And we all like not getting stabbed too hard in the face. So we should probably have protective gear to make sure that we don't hurt ourselves. It's equally valid to both buy your stuff and to make your own stuff. If you want to make your own stuff, you should consult the fencing rules and the Marshal handbook to see if what you are making is actually living up to, well, our rules, to make sure that your fencing jacket doesn't suddenly burst when you get stabbed, or that your fencing mask doesn't cave in. Everything is outlined very well in the fencing rules, what kind of things you should have. But as an overall thing, you should have a mask or a helmet that covers your face. You should have throat protection. You should have something that protects your torso and out to your armpits. That could be a fencing jacket. There can be some chainmail, a thick leather not harness. What do you call it? You call it a cuirass or plastron. You should have gloves that have a thick material like leather that should fit you and should protect you. You should have something to protect your groin, and it's also a very good idea to have back of the head protection. It's not required in every aspect of fencing, but if you want to be able to sort of cover all the bases of both light rapier, heavy rapier, and cut and thrust, then it's not a bad idea to have a hard protection of the back of your head. And if you should get your own stuff first before you start buying in bulk things for the rest of the group. Obviously, this makes things a lot easier. But when you do start to get a group going, then if you have a lot of people, you could look at package deals. A lot of stores do have club deals. You could get discounts. You can get a bunch of things at once. I do know that the HEMA shop, part of the night shop, do have a bunch of package deals for where you get both swords, plastic swords, obviously, and masks, and you can get bags and everything. And obviously you will need pointy things, like I mentioned. You can't fence without fencing equipment. And as most of us probably know at this point, the most common, what you call it, the most common thing we use in rapier fencing is a steel rapier. So to get your own sword, get your own things, But obviously there are other things, other materials for swords you can use. There are a lot of plastic swords out there that are decent for practice, at least. Most tournaments probably won't allow plastic swords when most people use metal swords. So just make sure that everyone involved has similar things, similar gear when it comes to swords, so that we don't destroy each other's stuff. And again here, get your own things before you start buying in bulk. And you should also get other things than swords. Everybody loves the dagger once in a while. Bucklers are really good as well, good protection, and they could be making things fun for the practice. Get to try different things. Obviously soft parries as well, like cloaks, can really shake things up. And you can even get a secondary sword if you like that sort of thing. Now, once you've gotten a few things down of, I'm going to do like that so I can see everything here. You should probably do some reading. You should not just read the fencing rules and fencing marshals. You could probably get some books and read them. I have 2 books. Most of you probably have way more than that. I have Nicoletto Giganti's book, and I also have Bolognese fencing manual. And it's not necessary, but if you are getting into the swing of things, no pun intended, then you might want to go a bit deeper, not just doing the things that your teacher is telling you to do. You could go into these other masters, like Giganti, Agrippa, Boglese, Destresa, all of these things. You can get them fairly easily online. If Amazon usually has some manuals, and many other well-stocked bookstores might have them in as well. I bought both of mine from a Swedish bookstore called Adlibris, and they have, to my knowledge, they have way more than just these things. Here we have an example of a historical manual. I believe this is Döbringer. It's a German longsword fencing techniques. Here we have Agrippa casting some sort of spells, it would seem. And this is, of course, Nicoletto Giganti. And I am not quite sure who this master is, but this is a good example of 2 people using cloaks to defend themselves. Now, you've gotten a group together. Awesome. How do we keep this up? Obviously, you don't just you can't keep doing the same thing forever, or people might get bored. So we'd like to keep a varied schedule. You might want to plan to try out different styles. If you mainly focus on heavy rapier, you could try a different master. Excuse me. You could look into different techniques. You saw someone do a cool thing once at an event. You want to try that. So you could plan that in. You could plan in specific classes for different weapons. The way we do it in Gyllengran is we sort of rotate rapier and longsword for every 3rd week sort of thing, and then we have practices dedicated solely to sparring. Obviously, sparring is the most fun thing that we do. It's when we just get to try how good we actually are. Thank you, dear. Sorry, I sort of lost my way there. We spar because that's the most fun thing we do. You get to try your new toys. You get to try the new techniques that you just learned, and you get to try them out in real time. And sparring should be part of every practice, obviously, but it might be a good idea to just have one practice every once in a while. We have every third practice, we have rapier, longsword, and sparring. And then at the sparring, you get to do whatever you want. You can try cut and thrust, you can try longsword, you can try whatever you want. To do silly things, you can do that. It's also all good fun. And you could throw in a melee once in a while, because when else are you going to get to use your rubber band gun? Another way to keep things interesting is to have elements of competition. Obviously, tournaments are a big part of every martial thing, martial exercise that we have in the SCA, and so getting to get a taste for the competitive aspect of things could be very healthy for those that are interested in doing so. And this could be anything from a once a month tournament where you just go through everyone, you decide the format, you can do some sort of roast tournament or whatever. In Gyllengran, we have the so-called fencing ladder, which is a challenge tournament where the aim is basically to get the top spot and try to stay there as long as possible. I'm sure you'll be surprised to know that both Master Fadeng and His Majesty have held the top spot several times for long periods of time. But the way it works is you can challenge someone who is of a tier 1 or 2 tiers higher than you on the ladder, and if you beat them in a 3-round contest where the challenged person gets to choose the weapon form, then you change places. And that goes the same if they are just 1 tier over you or 2 tiers over you. If they're 2 tiers over you, you get their place and they get yours. And then you keep doing that until someone holds the top spot. We don't have an official end for it. It's sort of a Nordic 1000 sort of deal. We stop when we feel like it. Now, you might have the luxury problem of having a large group. What do you do then? Well, a good idea could be to divide them by experience, so that the less experienced get to fight with people that are more on their level, and the same thing goes for the people with more experience. And then obviously you should, when sparring, you should also try to mix the groups. But it's not necessarily necessary for the most experienced people to go back and do all the basic stuff that they already know. Once in a while, obviously that's good, but they don't need to repeat that every single practice, especially if you have new people, so that the new people can get into the more experienced group faster. Another thing you can do to maintain enthusiasm is get well dressed. I think most of us know that Master Anna believes that looking good on the field is just as important as fencing good. Obviously, I don't mean that as a slight towards Master Anna. She can outfence the best of us, but nonetheless, looking good on the field can inspire both you and your friends or enemies to take a greater interest in the hobby as a whole. They could lead to get new people into other aspects of the SCA. They could get into armoring or sewing or anything. It's the snowball effect sort of deal. You push it down the hill and then you watch it get bigger. You should obviously do demos locally to get new members in, get them interested in the SCA. And you should also go to events such as this one. Obviously, we want to see each other in person next time we do this, but I can say that the most fun experiences I've had with fencing has been on Gyllengran Fencing Camp, and it's what really got me hooked. And I think many people can agree that going to events and seeing people fence and trying it for yourself is what really made you interested in the hobby. And another way to maintain enthusiasm is to sort of do what we've been doing this past year or so, is look at videos of your own fencing, whether it be old practices that you had together or your own fencing, because not all of us have the fortune of living really close to each other. Some people need to drive for several hours to go to a fencing practice, and so maybe you can't have them as often. You can't have them every week. We're very blessed that way in Gyllengran. So you could instead rouse to have online meetings when you can't go and see your friends and stab them for real. You can analyze your own fencing and others and sort of go into the nitty-gritty details. You don't focus so much on technique, but you can, or anything like that, but you can practice footwork, you can practice body mechanics, you can get a lot going. A lot of good things can come from just looking at what you do and having people point that out to you, and as well as inspiring you to practice more at home. I know that I didn't practice at home at all before we started doing these online meetings. That goes as well for heavy fighting as well. But it's a good idea to maintain contact and to get something good out of something less good. And I think we can all agree that the best thing about the SCA is the camaraderie, the friendship that we build, both on the field and off the field and in between the field. If you introduce members to the other areas of SCA, they will get the social aspect of the hobby, and we can't just rely on fencing to be the fun thing. Otherwise, this hobby probably wouldn't be what it is today. So if you can get new members, or old members for that matter, into other aspects of the SCA, I think they will have more fun and you will have more fun with them. The people that you have the best time with is not necessarily the people that show up to every practice. The people you will have most fun with is the people who stay after practice. Just talk smack, have a pizza, have a good time, and get them involved. And I think that, I think that will make everyone's experience a lot better. And that's all I had. And I can finally breathe. do we have any questions? I see the chat has gotten a few. I'm just quit that. Yes, the Princess Bride, of course. I will stop the recording now. I don't think I have any more things that I need to say as far as that. Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that. The manual, the Marshal's handbook and the fencing rules can be easily found on the Drachenwald website. Going to this is Drachenwald, to offices, and the fencing marshal. Here are the rule books, and the fencing marshal handbook. And you can also find your local group and contact them. And if they don't have a fencing marshal, they can at least try and point you in the right direction. And here we have the same thing for Nordmark. Here we have we even have all what the cost is, so you know that right away. Yeah. Oh, and if you can't find any good books, there is there's the Wichtenauer, which is the sort of what you call it, free source project for HEMA, where they have a bunch of masters works where you can look at it and use it to your heart's content. All right. I'll stop sharing at least. Do we have any questions, or have I just been saying really weird things for 30 minutes? Gotik has no marshal. Do I need to become one before starting practices? His Majesty is shaking his head, and I will take that as a no. You do not need to have a marshal. You don't need to have a fencing marshal. You do need to have. You might need a local marshal for it. I don't know if either of my masters agree here.
Well, I can try. You don't need to be a fencing marshal, but you have to have some kind of contact person for the fencing that are in contact. But in your case, the Nordmark fencing marshal.
Yes.
But then, of course, it's a good idea to try to have a local marshal as soon as possible.
Yes.
Take contact with Nordmark marshal and start fencing.
To confuse things a bit, there is what you call a marshal and reporting marshal, which is, one is just an office that takes care of the paperwork, which is, you become that as easy as, hey, I want to be a reporting marshal, you're it. To become a fencing marshal, to run tournaments, there's a bit of training.
Yeah.
To run a training, you don't need to be a fencing marshal, but you can become a reporting marshal and have contact with the Nordmark fencing marshal, or wherever your group is.
It's also good to know that in Sweden we are connected to the Budo och Kampsportsförbundet, which is sort of martial arts union.
We're not actually.
We're not.
No. It's Svenska Kampsportsdelegationen. We have a legal thing that allows us to hit each other actually.
Okay. Then we
but you guys are more than welcome to join the HEMA Federation if you want to join the Swedish Budo Kampsportsförbundet. Just so you know, we take all kinds.
Either way, it's good to know that we are actually reporting to a different governing body to make sure that we do things right. We report our injuries if we have any, even if you don't have any actually. And so that might be good to know. If you are a local marshal or a reporting marshal, you don't necessarily have to deal with them yourself, but you need to report your practices once in a while, as well as any injuries that you might incur.
Basically, if the police come by and ask, do you really have the legal, are allowed to do this? You say yes, as long as you follow the SCA rules for the practice and tournaments and stuff, and especially reporting bits, then you are no problems with the police, hopefully. Then maybe the police don't know about it, but they can check the paperwork.
Yeah. What does it take to become a fencing marshal? Well, first you have to become a marshal in training. And that is as simple as contacting the principality marshal and say, hey, I want to become a marshal in training. And then he goes, all right. And then maybe asks around, and then he says, yes, you can be a marshal in training. You need to read the marshal's handbook, and you need to know the rules. And what more is there? To become a marshal, there are certain things you need to do. You need to hold classes. You need to, what is it? You need to marshal for some tournaments or at official events. There is a checklist available on the Drachenwald website as well. You can go through it, and I'm sure that if you ask the marshal, yes, exactly that link there. If you ask the marshal, what does it take to become a marshal, they will probably give you a better answer than I just did.
The checklist is perfect, but basically you should do all the marshal's job when a marshal supervises you to see you can do it. Hold the tourneys, melees, armor inspections and stuff like that.
Yes.
And if a marshal, you've done it several times and marshal says, yeah, he's doing a good job, he or she, then the principality marshal or kingdom marshal says, you are marshal, tag it, go out and work.
As Rebecca says, being in the wrong place at the wrong time at an event will also make you a marshal in training. Right. When I contacted the marshal, he said, well, His Majesty and Master Fadeng have both said that you are a good candidate for this, so who am I to say no? Yeah. Insurances for injuries through the SCA. That is a very good question that I do not have the answer to.
Not really, no. The SCA has insurances that cover the SCA itself, and in some cases, some of the legal fees for the SCA officers. But if you mean insurances that would cover your medical costs if you get broken, no, that kind of insurance the SCA doesn't have. That's the short answer. The longer answer is that the SCA in Europe is not just the Society for Creative Anachronism Incorporated, but about half a dozen different legal entities. So please look at what the SKA has.
Yes. So again, probably contact the marshal. How common are injuries in fencing? I have not sustained any injuries. I have not seen any injuries, but I'm sure there have been some.
The SCA's injury record as a whole is very good. There have been some over, we've been doing this now for 5 decades. And there have been the occasional injuries, but some studies and research has been done, especially in the US SCA, and the injury rate is very, very low compared to almost any other activity, athletic activity you can think of. So, it's part of that is due to, an early paranoia about injury after a couple of high-profile accidents in the Olympic fencing world, which led to really sort of reactionary armoring and training standards, which have stood us in pretty good stead over the years.
That said, if you happen to have an accident, you will be very glad to have some kind of an insurance. Yeah, well, what comes to mind is that Countess Anna broke her finger once at an event with long swords. I have once broken my kneecap at a mundane HEMA practice. And while that sort of thing is very, very rare, it's very, very, very nice and comforting to have an insurance that does cover it.
If you are a sport club, how the good English, I don't know. But if you're in Sweden, you have a registered club that does sports. You are automatically insured in our federation that's called Svenska Budo- och Kampsportsförbundet. And I think you pay something.
29 crowns per person.
And then you are insured to your training, under your training, and when you're going home from your training. And I personally believe that's a very small step for an SCA club to become a sports club, because I think it's quite silly that you train and you don't have an insurance, because even if there's a low probability rate for injuries, it's still a martial art, and you should have an insurance even if Frostheim is a SCA federation, your participants in your training should have an insurance, because you can get hurt. Even if it's a low probability in 50 years, we still have broken fingers. We still have, I've seen people having masks that's been caved in and that sort of stuff. For 29 crowns a pop, that's kind of a no-brainer for me. So.
You should also be aware that if you have a personal accident insurance, it most often doesn't cover martial arts. So you might think that you are personally insured, but you are not.
And a lot of this is very country dependent, and at least historically in the SCA has been driven by trying to keep the costs of membership low, because we do so many other things that are not martial activities, that trying to raise membership fees in order to generate insurance for people who are not necessarily doing the activity is problematic. And then having tiered memberships where if you are going to do the activity, you have to pay more for insurance is also problematic for different reasons. Plus the healthcare system changes from country to country, and some places are better than others about various things. It's a complicated issue. It really is a complicated issue.
All right, do we have any more questions? Any
I
tips
can
for
just
buying
add that-
used equipment? Oh, sorry, Your Majesty.
And if you want to start up a group or improve your group and whatnot, reaching out to experienced fencer and inviting them to a practice or a weekend when it's possible, that's a very good way to go about it. Because most of us will look at the calendar and go, yeah, this day works, and then come there and teach.
Yeah. And we're happy to. We have a question for any tips for buying used equipment, where to look? I don't have a good answer for that. I know there is a Facebook group for used HEMA stuff, but other than that, I don't really know. I think it's a bit of a word a word of mouth sort of deal going on, at least for us. But there are plenty of good online stores that have good equipment as there is. I know I've seen some fencing equipment on Blocket. I wouldn't vouch for it necessarily. The thing is, if you want a good fencing mask, it's the same way you shouldn't buy a used motorcycle helmet. You should probably get a new good mask and make sure that it fits you. And yeah.
Popping the question in Drachenwald or Nordmark forums and asking if there is someone who have it laying around might make people look at, oh, well, I do have this stuff laying around for ages that haven't been used and I will not use them. So that's one way to go about it, to find used equipment. Usually those people know what it is and what's okay and what's not okay.
Yeah. We have a follow-up question. How do I know if a sword on eBay is okay for fencing? A very good question. I would probably contact the seller personally and ask, has this been used for fencing? Could this be used for fencing? But again, that's also a bit of a crapshoot. Unless it really looks like this looks like a HEMA equipment, I would be careful with it. But it's difficult to say with secondhand stuff. If it's listed as HEMA equipment, then it not unlikely to be okay for fencing, but you should probably take it with a pinch of salt nonetheless. Or ask your friends, ask us, ask ask people in your local area. Does this look good? Does this look like it could fit the rules for fencing? And I mean, any old, not old, but any foil or swords like that, would probably be legal for light rapier in the SCA. So if they look like Olympic fencing equipment, then it's probably good for that aspect of rapier fencing. I didn't know we would have this much discussion. That's really, really nice that we did. Yeah. Will there be more events like this one? When? Hopefully there will be more events where you actually get to meet people. If there will be more events just like this one, I don't know. I can't say at a drop of a hat, but there are. Check the Drachenwald calendar. There you can find more events like this and unlike this. So keep an eye out. Keep an eye out on Facebook, on our Discord, on other people's Discord, wherever where you may find SCA related information. And yes, as Morales says, a lot of the things marked as HEMA or SCA on eBay, even on established stores, might not necessarily be good for our hobbies. So take everything with a pinch of salt and ask around and ask the seller. But most probably best to ask your friends who you know are knowledgeable about this.
Well, I think when it comes to swords, it's kind of like you cannot get good and cheap.
Yeah.
And especially if you're gonna pay, say, 100 euros on an eBay for a sword that turns out to be total crap, well, maybe you could have used the 200 and get a new one from a seller that people know that this will work.
Yes, absolutely. Gilbert makes a very good point. You can find good, relatively cheap swords if you look at the right places, but if you have any questions, just ask anyone that you might know. Yes, as His Majesty is saying in the chat, you are all very welcome to join our Monday practices between the 6 o'clock CET and 8 o'clock in the evening on Mondays. You hope to start a fencing group in Gotvik when COVID allows. The time is available and the stars are aligned. Yes, we very much hope that you can. I know Gothenburg is a very good city for HEMA and HEMA related things. So if you can't get a hold of us or anyone else that fences, then you could probably get to know a few local HEMA people. I can't say for sure that they will be good people necessarily, but I can't say that about myself either. So, you know. And thank you very much for joining this event, Knut. We're very happy to have you. And Rebecca of Flint Heath also invites people on Saturdays between 1 and 2 p.m. UK time. So that's for us Swedes, that's between 2 and 3, I would believe. Yes, in the afternoon. I still don't know PM AM. Awesome. Well, I could probably stop the recording.